Welcome to Mission Publishers Presents, our premiere episode where we talk to authors, we talk about the publishing process, and we just talk about our vision with Mission Publishers. Mission Publishers exists to give God's people and those who are called to write an opportunity to do so. We look for the ordinary person with an extraordinary story, and our mission is exactly your story. Today, you're going to be hearing from our very first author, published by Mission Publishers. Her name is Mrs. Tina Green, and her book is entitled How to Really Get Married: Finding God's Productive Path to the Altar. That's right. There isn't one way, there's a best practice way to get to the altar. And also to understand all the steps involved in the marriage process, the premarital process. So we're going to enjoy talking with her today. We're going to dive right on in. So help me give a hearty welcome to Mrs. Tina Green as she comes and talks to us today about how to really get married. Mrs. Green, welcome. I'm so happy to have you here today. And I'm so enthused about our process that we've had working together, walking out this book together, and just watching the Lord bring all of this together. And it's certainly been a journey for both of us. It's been a great process. So hearty welcome to you from Mission Publishers.
Thank you, Selena. It's so great to be here. It's so wonderful to get an opportunity to talk about this book and as you said, the process that we went through to produce it. One of the things you said, you mentioned stages of getting married, and the fact of the matter is, we do it anyway. Relationships go through stages in order to mature and develop. It's just that we're not usually consciously aware of the stages, and we're certainly not always aware of what needs to be accomplished at each stage in order to proceed in a healthy way.
Well, how did you come about writing a book about getting married? I know you're a marriage therapist, you're a family relation therapist, you are masters in social work, a teacher, an educator. What drove you? Tell me your story. Tell our viewers your story when you were young and different things. What was always impressed on your heart? It's just such a dear story. I want them to hear.
It is not surprising to me that I focused on marriage. I feel as though marriage has always been very important to me, very interesting to me. And I've always believed that there should be a way to do it so that people proceed with joy and minimize pain. And I think that we are saturated with the pain and problems of marriage. We don't generally get as much information as we need about the healthy marriage. When I was a very young girl, before I was a teenager, my mother got the Ladies' Home Journal magazine in the mail, and I would snatch it up and turn immediately to this section called "Can This Marriage Be Saved?" And in the narrative, there would be her story, his story, and then the therapist's take on the story. I didn't ever think in terms of being a marriage counselor at that time, but I was fascinated that there was this her story, his story, and the intervention. So moving forward, I began to do counseling, and then couples would come to me, and I had a couple come that had just decided they were going to commit to one another. And they asked me if I would be willing to counsel them. And I said, okay, let me coach you through this process. And coaching them through the process, the Holy Spirit was impressing upon me the stages they were going through. And as I watched them go through each stage, I was recording what was taking place. And some of the things were very surprising, and some of them were, all of them were interesting. But the process of going from that original couple to making it a book was challenging because I never thought of it as a book. I just thought of it as a process.
Yes, 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 yes. And so we took that process and we put it between covers and we finally got it into book form, right? So, um, but I love how you explained it was a process, and that was the exact story I wanted to hear, the little girl story with the ladies holding journal. That's the cutest thing. And, certainly God's gifting and calling was on you, to do that, and you grew into, that became your life's work. And one of the things that, I want our viewers to understand are the stages that are outlined in your book. Those are actually the chapters for your book, and they're actual stages that the couples go through, and they can work through those, and they go in, sequence with them, and some of them may overlap. So could you please explain to us and name what your stages are for your book?
Well, another thing that I was aware of was my own process. And I've been married for 60 years, but I remember vividly the stages that I went through getting married. I remember, for instance, the alone stage. I remember the things I decided while I was alone, the things I said I wanted, the things I said I didn't want. And I think that teenagers do that. I think you'd start around 11 or 12 and you start thinking, one of these days I'm going to have a husband and I want this and I want that and I don't. And also thinking in terms of who is the person I want to be when I'm a wife? Do I want to be that? Do I want to be like that lady or like that lady? Um, so the alone stage has been an important part that I suspect might be left out if you were just talking about getting married. The next stage is attraction. And that's that first time that somebody catches your eye and you catch their eye, or they catch your eye and you're checking to see. And attraction is based on a lot of things which are covered in the book. Moving to affection is when that mutuality starts and you can tell that the two of you really want to walk the same direction and that you probably want to walk it together. It's still a little tentative. And not only that, it's a little rose colored because everything looks wonderful from that stage. Um, when you get to the next stage, which is adjustment, is when you realize that not everything is rosy. You don't agree on everything. You have a fight. You think, wow, do I want to live like this? I don't like the fact that we're fighting, but this is also an essential part of growing because you're making adjustments and you work harder than you've ever worked before in this relationship to see, are we going to keep it? We're back to, can this be saved? Are we going to keep it or are we going to chuck it? You walk that out. And if you're successful, you get to a level called acceptance. And that's a much kinder stage where you look at one another and say, yes, that's the way she is, but it's okay. I can manage. I can accept them. They are accepting me. You move from acceptance to attachment. And that's the lovely time when you just know this is my future. This is my future person. This is who I'm going to spend I want to spend my life with. And you begin to really connect on an emotional level w- in a way that you have never connected before with anyone. You move from that. At that point, you really are in love and you really are ready to be public. But when you get a ring, someone says, will you? And you take a ring, then everybody's involved. The world gets to enter in and have their say and kind of make you over in their image in some ways. The couple comes together to form a united front at that point so that they can be who they are, regardless of what influences may be from the outside. So you must deal with family and friends and their ideas about what you should or should not do. And at the end, and you go through your own crises again of thinking that all through again. And at the end, there, I'm sorry, I didn't name that stage. That's the avowal stage where you get engaged. And at the end is a ceremony that puts you together permanently. After that, I wrote a chapter called Afterwards, and it really just outlines what will be required immediately of you once you walk away from the venue, what will be required and what you will need to commit to personally in order to be the spouse of another person, and what God's intention is in bringing you together, and what does he want from you? What does he want from you as a couple? Suddenly there's a God has his word in this, and you need to be attentive to what he's saying to you as a couple. So that's the book.
Those stages, um, they just they take you there in a very well, it sounds like it's difficult work, and yes, you have to put your whole self in it, but what I love about it is that we have stories in there, we have examples in there, we have, just we just hit the topics and we hit those things, and the book just, resonates with that person's stage, and I believe that we just covered, the things that are most important in those stages, and it's a very charming and endearing read, and I think I'm so pleased with the work that God has done in this because it really helps couples, right, to move through these things and they feel like they're going through it with you right there. Like a person that may be in your counseling session, and you're hearing your voice, they're getting your wisdom. We're getting stories from the Bible. We're remarking on things. We're saying, no, wait, yes, go, and this is what you do, and this is what you don't. And that really does equip them to, halt at that stage, reassess, think about things, and they know what to expect and what not to expect. What do you think is the most difficult things, or do couples have difficulty moving through the stages?
Um, well, first of all, couples are not a monolith, and that's one of the things I think you're referring to because of my experience both raising and overseeing the lives of 3 young adults and interacting with their friends, and then having other young adults come into my life who went through these same stages. I hope, been able to address the differences. The people come with different backgrounds, and the idea that every girl, graduates from high school or college and at 18 or 20 or 22 or 24 is ready to get married, that's not our current situation. And so I try to write to people who come maybe at this from another vantage point. I write for people who have maybe been married before. I write for people who already have children. I try to include as many possibilities, as many directions as I can. And also, I've had to work in the idea of long distance marriage, of meeting on the internet, things that didn't exist when I was courting or even 20 years ago, but are now part of the marriage landscape. So each couple has their challenges, and I hope through uh, expanding my view of pre-marriage, I reach most people as they are preparing. They will find themselves in this book somehow. As you know, Selena, the second marriage takes the same amount of work and the same amount of time, the same amount of development in order to bring together two people as the first time. So people can read this book who have perhaps already done this once. It'd be worthwhile to check it out because this is new. It's a new relationship. It's a new person. It's a new marriage. And being older doesn't mean that you aren't also going to need this same kind of information.
Absolutely. Absolutely. we have people chiming in on this book from age 16 all the way up into their 70s about, how it's ministering to them. Their grandchildren are reading it. They're reading it. They're using it in their marriage. And then they're the ones, and then there's some who are all different ages who are reconsidering or wanting to be married again. And, it's like you said, there's no monolithic couple and process, but the process frames the person and can inform the person on what that process is for the Lord. So speaking back to the couples, though, your book doesn't begin talking about, oh, you're a couple. As we discuss, it starts with alone. And I want to just go there a little bit more and explain. I want you to explain and share what is so significant about the alone chapter. It is literally the longest chapter in the book.
It is the longest chapter, and it's amusing to the two of us that it was the last one written because um because it didn't involve a couple. I hadn't considered its significance. And then in a conversation with Selena where we talked about, she said, "Well, when did you decide that? Or when did you do that?" And I said, "Oh, I did that before I was married. I did those things before I was married." And she said, "Well, that's not in the book." And so we back doubled back and wrote the alone chapter, which turned out to be so important. Um, the question of alone, I suggest that when we are alone is when we do the hardest work we do. And we are going to be alone all of our lives. There's always just me, and there's sometimes only me. But as there's always just me, I have me to deal with. And so I think it's a good setup. It's a good platform. It's a good format for the future of your relationship to consider yourself first. And in any issue that arises, in any uh a spiritual attack, in any desire for growth and change, it's ourself first. And it's cliche to say the only person you can change is yourself. That's true, but the only person you can fully influence is yourself as well. And so if you can talk to you in a way that gets you to a place of of comfort, of joy, of survival, of um, commitment, of confidence, that's your first work, and it will always be your first work. But in the process of getting married, looking at yourself first, looking at, as I said, the young person saying, "Who do I want to be? Who am I now? And particularly, what do I want to keep?" If you don't know what you want to keep, then everything about you is up for grabs. And that's simply not healthy. Nobody, nobody but you and the Holy Spirit can influence who you are or should. You were fearfully and wonderfully made. A lot of work went into crafting you, and you must always be respectful of the person you are and not allow, if you don't do that, then you will allow people to come into your life who will design you in their image. They will design you the way they think you should be. They will cause crises and upheaval in your life based on what they want. So alone turns out to be way more important than I expected. Um,
Just right there, I have to say, you said something. They will design you in their image. And every time we talk about things about the book, there's more there's more that's why I know, we're gonna have you on talking about all the chapters and all the segments, but just right here is where I just wanted to point out to our viewers that this is why I get excited about Mission Publishers. This is why I'm obeying the call. There's many companies out there that can do lots of things better, quicker, smarter, however. But it's a mandate from God, and it's because we form relationships and love and unity in the spirit through a product. And he just says, get this word out right now. And you're ministering to me just by saying right here, just by saying, they get to design you in their image. I mean, that just a light bulb goes off and just things I'm hearing. So the book is never a one and done. It's just a means to continue to share as the Holy Spirit is pouring in right now. And I just had to stop you and say that was just remarkable and just really resonated with why Mission Publishers presents is presenting the works of people such as yourself, um, to the body of Christ and others at large in order to say, this is what we're bringing to you. And I exist in order to help you get that story out. Um, and I'm just so in awe of what God does and how he uses ordinary people like us. And he gets extraordinary stories out of it. And, we're just, I'm just humbled. I'm sorry. It's the content and I'm just so humbled by what is happening right now and how I feel right now. This is not pre-planned. It just kind of overtook me. So, yes, that alone stage. That was the stage that, of course, I was in and going through with you, along that too. And it was just so eye-opening to just reveal how much God pours into us when we take that. I love your statement. You will always have you. You will always be working on yourself. Whether you're married, whether you have a house full of people in there, you always have your own work to do. You always have your own person to deal with in the Lord. And that's just the thing that really sticks about the alone stage. I'm really glad we said, wait, we need that and put that in there. Um, so yeah, yeah, just had a moment with the Lord. It was just very exciting and I can just feel it what you said. But the 8 stages to really get married.
Well, Selena, it's remarkable to know how important the alone stage is because of being married 60 years and having so many different circumstances, being involved in so many different living styles. Now I have my kids in my house. Now I have other people's kids in my house. Now I have grandkids in my house. Now I have infants or now I have, uh, and it's so important to have yourself, to be assured of yourself, but also to be active with yourself. Um, this is a story that has nothing to do with the book at all, but illustrates the self thing. My daughter was playing clarinet and she was 12 and she had gotten pretty good at it. But at the time, her teacher came to me and said it's time for her to own her own instrument. We had been using whatever the school gave us. It's time for her to have her own instrument. And I watched, and at that very moment, this child began to be as lazy as I had ever seen her about the instrument. And I thought, I can't invest in an instrument for somebody who's not even playing it and not being diligent about it. And I literally had to take myself aside and come to some terms with me about the clarinet. And once I came to terms with myself, I went to her and I said, your teacher wants you to have the instrument. It costs X amount. I am going to give you the instrument. I want you to understand something. It is a gift. It's yours. You can do whatever you want to, but I am giving it to you. That was the result of my working on me because I would otherwise have been watching over that child like a hawk, making sure she was using it the way I wanted it used. And it was so important that it be hers so that she could use it when she wanted it to be used. And this kind of self work, it comes up all the time. And so learning that, learning to deal with your emotions, your feelings, all of the Colossians 3 issues of anger and envy and those have those have you have to be in a conversation with yourself about those things all the time. And the fact that it's the beginning of the marriage book, it's only there because it's so it's so real. It's who you are always.
Yeah.
If that marriage doesn't take place, you still need to have done that work.
Wow. 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 If the marriage doesn't take place, you still need to do the work. Why? Because we are always preparing ourselves to be the bride of Christ, right? You need to write that in your book. uh, that's just a good place for me to read the back of the book cover, which I want our viewers to hear. Um, and it says many couples view marriage as an elusive accident. This is a profound book that you must read if you ever really want to get married. It does not talk about cake, flowers, or venues, but describes the 7 stages of pre-marriage that couples need to navigate in an 8th stage that describes what's next. Tina Green has coached and counseled scores of couples through this process, helping them stay on track and avoid jumping the gun. Not every couple that begins the race will or should finish the course. But if you finish successfully, then you will know how to really get married. You set the course out, you give the gifts, you give the tools, right? And they can assess how they use it, if it's to be used, and if it's going to make that cross over to the altar. So there's no process. There is only the process and all of the work that's theirs to do. And it's God's work in them. And it's a beautiful thing. And this book brings me joy all the time. This book brings me joy all the time. You guys, we went through so much with just getting a little cover and getting our little people on there and getting the covers right and just getting the information right. And the Lord brought it all together. So please, so you can visit missionpublishers.com and find out more of what we do. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Tina Green.
Thank you.